Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Money in the Bank review. Money in the Bank tonight was from the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California, and the show just ended. And Money in the Bank, it's one of my favorite PLEs that I look forward to every year to see who will be the women and men's Money in the Bank winners. But tonight, of course, we had the women's Money in the Bank ladder match and the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. For the woman, of course, it was Naomi versus Alexa Bliss versus Rhea Ripley versus Stephanie Vaquer versus Roxanne Perez versus Giulia. We also had the Intercontinental Championship on the line where Dominik Mysterio defended the title against Octagon Jr. The Women's Intercontinental Championship was on the line where Lyra Valkyria defended the title against Becky Lynch. And we also had the men's Money in the Bank ladder match where it was SETH ROLLINS versus LA Knight versus Sikoa versus El Grande Americano, aka Chad Gable, Penta, and Andrade. And the main event, we had Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. They teamed up to take on John Cena and Logan Paul, and we also had a surprise that happened where we're like, well, WWE, they kind of swerved us, they kind of played us, because we all fell for this, but it was a swerve that WWE pulled on us. So I'll get to talking about that when I get to the match. But Money in the Bank, I thought it was a good show, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the show. Although, you could have had two matches off the card. But that's just my opinion. But anyway, let's jump right into the review. Money in the Bank opened up with the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Alexa Bliss versus Roxanne Perez versus Naomi versus Stephanie Vaquer versus Giulia versus Mommy Rhea Ripley. And this was a good women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Obviously, I was pulling for Rhea Ripley to win it. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But the match got underway where we had all 6 women in the ring, and they were staring at each other. Rhea Ripley ended up going after Giulia. Bliss went after Stephanie Vaquer. And we had Naomi and Roxanne Perez going at it. Naomi ended up sending Alexa Bliss into Rhea Ripley. Stephanie Vaquer ended up trying to get a ladder in the ring, but Naomi ended up delivering a baseball slide into Vaquer. Naomi then brought the ladder into the ring. Rhea Ripley ended up slinging Alexa Bliss into the ladder, which knocked Naomi out of the ring. So Rhea Ripley then ended up smiling at Alexa Bliss. So Alexa Bliss then looked at Rhea Ripley and she smiled back to her. Both Rhea Ripley and Alexa Bliss end up looking up at the Money in the Bank briefcase, to which already the Money in the Bank briefcase already had a sponsorship on it. We had a Cash App sponsorship on the briefcase for both the women and the men. So sponsorships are getting out of control, in my opinion. You saw on the turnbuckles there was a Prime logo on like the top turnbuckle, and then on the bottom turnbuckle you saw a 7-Eleven logo on it. But the sponsorships, they look cool on the canvas, but it's getting out of hand, where they're placing sponsorships on the Money in the Bank briefcase, and we saw Fireball. They end up sponsoring the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, where the ladder was covered in Fireball sponsorship. So yeah, that's basically what we saw. Cash App logo on the Money in the Bank briefcase for both the women and the men, and the Fireball logo on a ladder in the men's ladder match. So Alexa Bliss went after the ladder, but Giulia and Roxanne Perez end up cutting them off. So we had Giulia and Roxanne Perez end up knocking both Rhea Ripley and Alexa Bliss out of the ring. Both Vaquer and Giulia were staring at each other. Vaquer ended up wiping both Giulia and Perez out with a springboard crossbody block. Vaquer ended up knocking both Giulia and Perez, and she had pinned Giulia with a running Meteor in the corner, which looked good. Vaquer then ended up laying Perez out with a double underhook gutbuster. Vaquer ended up picking up a ladder, but Naomi ended up kicking Vaquer in the head. Naomi then hit the X Factor onto Vaquer onto the side of the ladder, which was crazy. And Vaquer was out after that spot. Naomi then picked the ladder up, and she had pinned Rhea Ripley in her midsection. She had get on the apron. Naomi ended up driving Rhea's head into the ladder. Naomi then ended up throwing the ladder at Alexa Bliss, but Alexa ended up ducking. Bliss ended up taking Naomi and Roxanne Perez down onto the ladder, and Bliss ended up delivering a rolling senton onto both Naomi and Perez. So Bliss ended up throwing Naomi out of the ring. She then grabbed the ladder. Giulia ended up drop kicking Bliss down. Giulia then grabbed the ladder, and she set the ladder up in the corner. She then ended up attacking Bliss. Bliss ended up reversing the whip into the corner, but Giulia ended up putting the brakes on. Bliss ended up charging, but Giulia ended up sending her into the ladder. Giulia then ended up curb stopping Bliss into the ladder, to which the ladder then folded onto Giulia. So there was a point in the match where we had Stephanie Vaquer and Rhea Ripley. They were on the ladder, and Stephanie Vaquer ended up delivering the Devil's Kiss to Rhea, hitting Rhea's face on the ladder, which was crazy. You had a point where Rhea ended up grabbing Roxanne Perez for the Razor's Edge, but we had Perez ended up countering that into a Hurricanrana to Rhea Ripley onto the ladder, which was crazy. Good spot there. So we had Naomi later on end up setting the ladder up under the Money in the Bank briefcases. Naomi then climbed the ladder, but Stephanie Vaquer ran into the ring, and she ended up pulling Naomi down. Naomi started kneeing the way at Vaquer, but Vaquer ended up driving Naomi into the corner. Stephanie Vaquer ended up driving Giulia into Naomi, and she ended up taking her out. We had Stephanie Vaquer ended up twisting Naomi's knee with a dragon screw off the ropes. Later on, Giulia ended up applying a octopus stretch on Stephanie Vaquer. Stephanie Vaquer ended up powering through the pain of the octopus stretch from Giulia. She then climbed the ladder with Giulia on her back, which was absolutely crazy. Giulia then slid off, and she ended up pulling Vaquer off with a German suplex. So, pretty much at the end of the match, we had Naomi end up dumping Rhea Ripley and Alexa Bliss off the ladder. So, Naomi then climbed the ladder. She retrieved the briefcase, and there you go. Naomi ended up winning the match, and she is your 2025 Women's Money in the Bank winner. which this was the right move. I am really glad that Naomi won the Women's Money in the Bank briefcase. Even though my pick was Rhea Ripley, Naomi, she deserved it. Naomi deserved this win. It was the right call and the right decision. I really am looking forward to how they are going to be building Naomi with her being the, Women's Money in the Bank winner. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Overall, good Women's Money in the Bank ladder match it was. And then we had Dominik Mysterio. He had taken on Octagon Jr. This was for the Intercontinental Championship. And this all came into play because earlier today we had Worlds Collide, which I did not watch, but I heard it was a good show. And Dominik Mysterio and Octagon Jr. got into a brawl there at Worlds Collide. And Dominik ended up challenging Octagon Jr. to a match at Money in the Bank with the title, the Intercontinental Championship, on the line. So they ended up playing a video of that. And we saw El Hijo del Vikingo. He was at ringside. Of course, he's the AAA Mega Champion. Mr. Iguana was also there, which I heard Mr. Iguana got over at Worlds Collide. He got a big pop from the crowd. And he got a big pop from the crowd here at Money in the Bank. So a lot of people love Mr. Iguana. Also, Conan was there. He was also shown. But to me, this match, it was not that good, in my opinion. It only lasted for 5 minutes. This match could have easily been off the card. And they could have saved it for Monday Night Raw, in my opinion. Match got underway. Dominik ended up sliding as Octagon Jr. ended up going for a leap. Dominik ended up whipping Octagon Jr. to the corner. Octagon ended up scaling the ropes, and he delivered a twisting crossbody block to Dominik. Octagon ended up rolling under a clothesline from Dominik, and he had pinned a handspring into a head scissors takeover. Dominik then rolled out of the ring, and Octagon ended up catching Dominik with a side moonsault. And, of course, Liv Morgan was also out there. Of course, she accompanied Dominik. So Octagon ended up getting Dominik in the ring. He sized Dominik up. Dominik ended up dropping Octagon onto the top rope. He dropped Octagon crotch first onto the top rope. And Dominik then used Octagon's tail of his mask, and he tied Octagon to the bottom rope, which that led to Dominik stomping away at Octagon. So Dominik ended up posing. The ref had to untie Octagon's mask. So Dominik ended up jumping off the bottom rope. He started stomping away at Octagon's midsection. Dominik covered his ears because the crowd was chanting something to him. Dominik then ended up throwing his shirt at the AAA guys who were sitting at ringside. He threw it to Vikingo, Mr. Iguana. So Dominik started punching away at Octagon. He ended up sending him into the corner. So Dominik charged at Octagon, but Octagon started twisting away. Octagon ended up kicking Dominik away, and he ended up coming off the top rope with a corkscrew arm drag. Octagon then super kicked Dominik down, and he delivered a slingshot twist and splash onto Dominik, so he went for the cover, and Dominik ended up kicking out. Dominik then started up the Three Amigos. He ended up hitting 2 Amigos to Octagon Jr., to which Octagon blocked the third Amigo. But Dominik ended up quickly catching Octagon with a Michinoku driver. He ended up going for the cover, and Octagon kicked out. So Dominik ended up knocking Octagon into position for the 619. So Dominik ended up going for the 619, but Octagon ducked it, and he ended up going to the apron. Octagon started kicking Dominik away, and he pinned a slingshot twist and splash. He ended up going for the cover, to which Dominik kicked out. So Liv Morgan got on the apron, and she distracted Octagon. Dominik then ended up crotching Octagon on the top rope, and he ended up drop kicking Octagon into position for the 619, to which Dominik ended up connecting the 619 to Octagon. So Dominik ended up going up to the top rope for a frog splash, to which that connected to Octagon. Dominik then ended up rolling Octagon over because that frog splash he delivered, he hit it on Octagon's spine. So Dominik rolled Octagon over, and he went for the cover. There you go. Dominik Mysterio ended up winning the match, retaining the Intercontinental Championship. Overall, in my opinion, the match was not good. And then we saw Chad Gable. Chad Gable was with Brutus and Julius Creed. Chad Gable ended up unveiling to the Creed brothers a Fireball branded ladder, which it was a regular ladder, but it was branded Fireball, of course, sponsorship. And Chad Gable ended up telling the Creed brothers to put the ladder somewhere where El Grande Americano could find it. So Chad Gable ended up telling the Creed brothers to make sure to tell El Grande Americano as well. So the Creeds were really excited about the ladder. You know, they were like all excited, like, hey. Yeah, that was that. So yeah, Fireball branded ladder we saw in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Then we had Becky Lynch versus Lyra Valkyria. This was for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. This was a decent match here, in my opinion. So we had Becky Lynch end up coming out first. Then Lyra Valkyria came out. And as Alicia Taylor was doing the announcements for Becky and Lyra, Lyra quickly attacked Becky and the match got underway. The bell rang. Lyra ended up pinning a run across body block to Becky. She ended up throwing Becky around. Lyra then lifted Becky up and she put her on the apron. Lyra then started punching Becky down to the floor. And Lyra's top was coming off. She ended up asking Jessica Carr, who was the referee of the match, to help her avoid, having a wardrobe malfunction. So, Jessica Carr ended up helping Lyra with that. So Lyra ended up going for a wrecking ball drop kick to the floor, but Becky blocked it, and Becky ended up pulling Lyra down to the floor. Becky ended up bouncing Lyra off the commentary table, and she whipped Lyra into the barricade. She then got Lyra back into the ring, and Becky ended up pinning a running forearm in the corner. She then took Lyra and delivered the Bexploder to Lyra, to which she ended up going for the cover, and Lyra kicked out. Becky ended up clubbing Lyra's spine, and she choked Lyra on the middle rope. Becky then continued to attack on Lyra. Lyra then countered with a backslide pin onto Becky, to which Becky kicked out. Becky quickly ended up going for the manhandle slam, but Lyra countered that into a pin, to which Becky ended up kicking out. Lyra ended up attempting to hit the Nightwing, but Becky countered out of that with a slam to Lyra, to which she ended up going for the cover. Lyra kicked out. So Becky then connected with some leg drops to Lyra. She went for the cover. Lyra kicked out. Becky then bounced Lyra off the turnbuckles. She then ended up quickly kicking Lyra. Lyra quickly started fighting back, and she had pinned a swinging neckbreaker to Becky. Lyra then ended up pinning a pair of clotheslines, which was followed by a strike combo and a step-up enziguri to Becky. Lyra then connected with a gut-wrench sit-out powerbomb, which looked good. So she ended up going for the cover, to which Becky kicked out. Lyra then grabbed Becky's arm, and she ended up pulling on Becky's arm. So Lyra ended up lifting Becky, but Becky slid off, and she ended up sending Lyra into the corner. Becky ended up blocking a kick from Lyra, and she ended up flipping Lyra over. She then ended up delivering the DDT to Lyra, to which she ended up going for the cover, and Lyra kicked out. You had Becky later on end up hitting a manhandle slam to Lyra on the floor, which it was a vicious manhandle slam. So Becky ended up rolling into the ring to break the count. So Becky ended up going to the outside. She grabbed Lyra, but Lyra ended up delivering the Nightwing to Becky on the floor, which was crazy. So Jessica Carr ended up counting, and as Jessica Carr ended up counting to 9, both Becky and Lyra rolled into the ring. So we had Lyra end up getting Becky on her shoulders. Becky slid off, and she ended up rolling Lyra up, to which Lyra kicked out. So at this point in the match, which was, the end of the match, Lyra and Becky, they were trading pins. Becky ended up rolling Lyra over. She grabbed Lyra's tights. So there you go. Becky Lynch ended up winning the match, and she is your new Women's Intercontinental Champion, which I'm not surprised there. I knew that Becky was going to take the title off of Lyra, and a lot of people saw that coming. But post-match, Becky took the Women's Intercontinental Championship, and she looked at Lyra as Lyra was seated on the canvas. Becky wanted Lyra to get up and raise her arm. So Lyra was not happy that she had to raise Becky's arm, to which she eventually did raise Becky's arm. So Lyra ended up going to leave the ring. Becky was like, no. Becky wanted Lyra to raise her arm for all 4 sides of the ring. So Lyra reluctantly ended up holding Becky's arm up. She ended up going to leave, but Becky's like, no. I want, I want the title to be put around my waist. So Lyra was getting so upset here. Becky then gave Lyra the Women's Intercontinental Championship, and Becky wanted Lyra to put the title around her waist. So Lyra put the Women's Intercontinental Championship around Becky's waist, and then she ended up hitting Becky with a German suplex. Lyra then followed up the German suplex to Becky with the Nightwing. So Lyra ended up laying out Becky with the Nightwing. So that was basically that. Overall, decent match this was. The build for this match, I didn't even care for. And the segments that Becky and Lyra had were just absolutely awful, in my opinion. But this was a decent match to, forget about all that. Forget about the awful, promos that Lyra and Becky delivered. So, but do we get one more match between Becky and Lyra? Obviously, Lyra is going to get her rematch clause for the Women's Intercontinental Championship, and she'll probably lose that match as well. But overall, like I said, decent match between Becky and Lyra. I thought they really worked well here. I thought this was better than their Backlash match, in my opinion. And then we had the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, to which, why did this not main event the show? If I was booking this show, I would put John Cena, Logan Paul versus Cody Rhodes, and Jey Uso next, and have the men's Money in the Bank match main event. But we had Seth Rollins, who was accompanied by Paul Heyman, of course. He had taken on Penta versus El Grande Americano versus Andrade versus Sikoa versus LA Knight. And The men's Money in the Bank ladder match was awesome. Very good spots from these 6 guys in the match. But the match got underway. Seth Rollins noticed everyone was surrounding him. Penta, El Grande Americano, Chad Gable, Andrade, Sikoa, LA Knight. So we had Penta and Andrade and LA Knight. They were beating down on Seth Rollins. Sikoa and El Grande Americano did not beat Rollins down. Sikoa ended up grabbing Rollins and threw him over the top rope. Sikoa ended up turning around, and we had Penta, LA Knight, and Andrade end up attacking him. Knight ended up taking Sikoa down with a neck breaker. Penta then ended up hitting a handstand slingshot dropkick to Sikoa. Knight quickly ended up drop kicking a ladder into El Grande Americano as he tried to get into the ring. Rollins got into the ring, ended up attacking Andrade and Sikoa. Andrade ended up fighting back. He ended up kicking Rollins down. Rollins then reversed the whip on Andrade, and Andrade ended up hitting a somersault plancha over the top rope onto the other competitors down at ringside. Nice somersault plancha that Andrade ended up hitting over the top rope. So Rollins was sent out of the ring. Penta ended up going to the top rope, and he ended up wiping everyone out with a crossbody block to the floor. And this was really weird here on commentary. So Wade Barrett on commentary, he was talking about how both Chad Gable and El Grande Americano have different nipples. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is Wade Barrett, talking about? Why is he talking about fucking nipples? Different nipples on Chad Gable and El Grande Americano. What the fuck? So stupid. God. So awful and cringe. Wade Barrett talking about, oh, Chad Gable and El Grande Americano have different nipples. Why is Wade Barrett looking at nipples on Gable and Americano? God. That was so cringe when he said that. So El Grande Americano ended up leaning a ladder against the ring post. Penta kicked Americano in the head, and he rolled him into the ring. Penta then put the ladder in the ring. Penta started chopping away at Americano's chest, and he sent him into the opposite corner, and he delivered a kick to him. Penta ended up going for a headstand slingshot suplex, but Rollins ended up driving a ladder into Penta. Andrade ended up going for a dive, but Rollins ended up knocking Andrade out of midair with the ladder. Rollins then set up the ladder under the briefcase. Americano ended up attacking Rollins, and Americano ended up hitting a torture rack slam onto the ladder to Rollins, which that had to hurt. So Americano set the ladder up. He started to climb the ladder, and the ladder was too short for him to reach the briefcase. Sikoa pulled Americano off the ladder, and he drove Americano into the ladder. Sikoa then leaned the ladder against the corner. Sikoa then grabbed Americano, and he scoop slammed Americano onto the ladder in the corner. Knight came in, and he drove Sikoa into the ladder. He then started punching away at Sikoa. We had Sikoa end up lifting Knight. He ended up going for the Samoan drop onto the ladder, but Knight countered into a neck breaker on the ladder to Sikoa, which that was crazy. You had Sikoa end up pulling Knight down because Sikoa ended up knocking Andrade's ladder over. This was later on. And Sikoa pulled Knight down, and he ended up hitting the Samoan spike. And Rollins then delivered the pedigree to Penta. So we had Rollins end up driving a ladder into Sikoa's midsection, and he leaned it against the second turnbuckle. He drove the ladder into Sikoa's midsection. Rollins was sent up for a powerbomb, but Sikoa ended up lifting him. Rollins then ended up sliding off. He ended up hitting a drop toe hold into the ladder. He then followed up with a stomp to Sikoa, to which that led to Sikoa rolling out of the ring. So Rollins climbed the ladder. Americano ended up climbing behind Rollins. Americano ended up hanging Rollins upside down over the ladder, and Americano locked in the ankle lock on Rollins. Andrade then climbed the ladder. He tried to go over Rollins. Penta then climbed behind Andrade. Andrade then ended up crushing Americano with a sunset flip powerbomb off the ladder, which that was awesome. Penta then ended up hitting Rollins with a suplex off the ladder onto the ladder that was leaning in the corner, which that was fucking crazy. Rollins' back caught the side of the ladder. Absolutely crazy. So then we had later on Penta climbed the ladder. Americano ended up cutting Penta off, and he had pinned a German suplex to Penta. Rollins got into the ring. Americano dropped Rollins with a German suplex. So Knight ended up getting in the ring, and Americano ended up delivering a German suplex to Knight as well. So Americano ended up going under the ring, and he finally retrieved the Fireball ladder. So Americano got the Fireball ladder in the ring, and he ended up doing a helicopter spin. He ended up wiping everyone with the ladder. Americano ended up sending the ladder up. He started to climb. Penta climbed on the other side of the ladder. And as Americano was grabbing for the briefcase, Penta ended up headbutting Americano off. So Penta went for the briefcase. Rollins cut Penta off. Penta ended up kicking Rollins down. And we saw Americano putting that metal plate under his mask like he always does. So Penta ended up grabbing for the briefcase. And as Penta was grabbing the briefcase, Knight catapulted Americano into the ladder that was leaning against the ring post. Americano scaled the ladder, and he used the ladder leaning in the corner as a pole. And he landed on the ladder that Penta was climbing. Americano then headbutted Penta off the ladder with that steel plate. So this was a great spot here. This was, in my opinion, spot of the night. LA Knight scaled the ladder, and he delivered a kamikaze to Americano off the ladder. It was fucking awesome. That was spot of the night, in my opinion. So this is where the match gets way, way overbooked. Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker came out because Rollins was barking, "Oh, come on out here. Come on out here, guys." So Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker came out. Breaker delivered a spear to Americano at ringside, a vicious spear that Breaker delivered. Bronson Reed pulled Penta down, and he started swatting Penta away. Breaker then ended up sending Knight over the top rope. Bronson Reed then ended up hitting Andrade. Breaker ended up going to the outside, and he delivered a spear to Knight on the floor. Bronson Reed ended up going to the top rope, and he delivered the tsunami to Andrade. So this led to Jacob Fatu and JC Mateo heading down to the ring. Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed end up waiting in the ring for Fatu and Mateo to get in there. So we had a brawl break out between them, between Fatu, Mateo, Breaker and Reed. Breaker ended up knocking Mateo out of the ring. Breaker then ended up sending Mateo into the ring post, and Breaker then speared Mateo through the barricade. So in the ring, Bronson Reed was going after Jacob Fatu. Reed hit the ropes. Fatu ended up hitting a pop-up Samoan drop to Bronson Reed, which was great. Fatu then ended up crushing Reed with a suicide dive. Jacob Fatu then pointed at Sol Sikoa, and he got Sol Sikoa in the ring. So Sikoa and Fatu end up setting the ladder up. Sikoa ended up embracing Jacob Fatu because Fatu was like, "I love you, Sikoa." So Sikoa started to climb the ladder. But Jacob Fatu turned and wildly looked at Sol Sikoa. Jacob Fatu grabbed Sikoa's ankle, which got a big ovation. And Sikoa was confused as to why Fatu was grabbing his ankle. So Fatu ended up shouting, "I hate you," to Sol Sikoa. Jacob Fatu pulls Sol Sikoa down, and he super kicks Sikoa. So we have Jacob Fatu turning face here, which that got the crowd going wild for Jacob Fatu. So Jacob Fatu positioned Sikoa, and he ended up hitting a moonsault onto Sikoa. So Fatu ended up grabbing Sikoa on the apron. Fatu ended up hitting Sikoa with a spin solo off the apron through the ladder bridge, to which Fatu ended up leaving the ring, which that got a good ovation from the crowd there. So Rollins ended up sliding a second fireball ladder into the ring. Rollins started to climb the ladder. Knight pulled Rollins off the ladder and started clubbing him. Knight started to climb, but Rollins pulled him down. Knight ended up going for the BFT, but Rollins ended up slamming Knight off the ladder. Rollins then dropped Knight with the stomp. This led to Rollins climbing the ladder. Rollins then grabbed the briefcase, and there you go. Seth Rollins ended up winning the match, and here's your 2025 Men's Money in the Bank winner, which this is his second time that he won Money in the Bank. You know, this is 2015 all over again here. But overall, this was an awesome men's Money in the Bank ladder match here. Post-match, Rollins celebrated with Paul Heyman, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed in there. But good match. Good Money in the Bank ladder match this was. And then we got confirmed that WrestleMania 42 will be returning to Vegas next year on April 18th and April 19th. Yeah, I'm expecting a dead crowd next year. You know, WrestleMania this year was very disappointing after coming off of WrestleMania 40 last year, which was one of the best WrestleManias in a long while. But hopefully WrestleMania 42 will be good. Hopefully the build will be much better than the build for WrestleMania this year. But we have to wait and see. And I have also news about King and Queen of the Ring, which they end up announcing. And this was announced last night on SmackDown, but I didn't watch SmackDown last night because, of course, I was at the Weekend concert. Went live for a little bit last night. If you guys haven't checked that out. But last night on SmackDown, Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis ended up announcing the return of the King and Queen of the Ring tournament. They end up saying that 16 superstars will participate in each tournament. And the first round of each tournament consists of 4 different Fatal 4-Way matches. And it will begin next week on Raw and SmackDown. And the 4 winners that will advance to singles matches in the later rounds. And the finals of each tournament will be at Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia on June 28th. And like last year, the winners of the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments will earn a title match at SummerSlam this year against the top champions of their respective brands. So, there you go. I like this new format for the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments. So, very much looking forward to both tournaments. Hopefully, they will be booked good. But can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see both tournaments. Hopefully, they're not predictable. But we'll see. And then they have announced what we're going to see on Monday Night Raw this Monday, where we're going to get the return of Nikki Bella. Yes, Nikki Bella is returning for an appearance on Monday Night Raw this Monday. Great. Who asked for this? Nobody. And then we're going to get Jey Uso versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. So that is all set for Monday Night Raw on Monday. Boy, aren't you guys ready to see Nikki Bella again? Are you? Are you all so excited? I know I am. No. Why we gotta see Nikki Bella on Monday? Please, why? Main event. Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. They have taken on Logan Paul and John Cena. Man, what a boring match this was. Absolutely fucking boring. Man, John Cena, I said this before, John Cena's heel run has been very, very disappointing. So the match started off with Cody Rhodes and John Cena. Both guys circled the ring. Cena tagged Logan Paul in. Logan Paul started dancing around, for a little bit, and then he tagged Cena back in. I'm like, what the fuck are we watching here? These few minutes into the match. So Cody and Cena locked up. Cody ended up hooking a side headlock. Cena backed Cody into the ropes, and he ended up whipping Cody off. But Cody ended up shoulder tackling Cena. Cena quickly got up, and he tagged in Logan Paul. Logan Paul started rolling around. Cody Rhodes did a cartwheel. Both Cody and Logan Paul locked up. Cody ended up hooking a side headlock on Logan Paul. Logan Paul whipped Cody off. Cody then shoulder tackled Logan Paul down. Cody ended up hitting the ropes. Logan Paul dropped down and he left frog him. Cody ended up catching Logan Paul and he ended up delivering a delayed vertical front suplex to Logan Paul. Cody then started wrenching Logan Paul's arm and he ended up tagging in Jey Uso. Jey came off the top rope and he started clubbing Logan Paul's shoulder. Logan Paul ended up quickly decking Jey with a loaded right hand. Logan Paul continued to strike Jey. Jey ended up hitting a pop-up reverse neckbreaker to Logan Paul, to which he went for the cover, and Logan Paul kicked out. Jey Uso got Logan Paul in the corner, and Jey started up the 10 punches. So Jey then laid out Logan Paul with a right hand. Logan Paul came back. He quickly elbowed and booted Jey Uso back. And Logan Paul ended up going to the second rope and he delivered a blockbuster to Jey Uso. So Logan Paul ended up going for the cover and Jey Uso ended up kicking out. Cena ended up tagging in and Cena started punching away at Jey Uso. Cena ended up whipping Jey into the corner. Jey ended up dropping down because Cena whipped Jey into the corner hard. Cena started staring at Cody. Cena then ended up grabbing Jey and he ended up whipping Jey hard into the opposite corner. So the ref got distracted. Logan Paul then dropped the elbow on Jey. So Jay ended up reversing a hard whip into the corner, and Cena ended up hitting Sturm first. Logan Paul then tagged in. So Logan Paul then connected with a gut wrench suplex. Cena then tagged back in. So Cena and Logan Paul double teamed up on Jay with some stomps. We had Cena end up hitting the 5-knuckle shuffle onto Jay. And he ended up setting up Jay for the AA, the attitude adjustment. Jay ended up sliding off, and he applied a sleeper hold onto Cena. Cena quickly ended up backing Jay into the corner, and ended up falling down to the canvas. So later on, we had a nice shot of Logan Paul calling over the drone that flies over the arena for, Monday Night Raw. They had the drone here for Money in the Bank. So Logan Paul grabbed the drone and he held it. It was a nice shot of the drone and Logan Paul grabbing the drone. So Logan Paul held the drone, and Cody Rhodes ended up cutting Logan Paul off. And Cody ended up hitting Logan Paul with a superplex. And the drone was filming all this. So then the drone picked up Jay, ended up delivering the Uso splash onto Logan Paul. So we had later on, Jay ended up leaping off the second rope with a spear to Cena on the commentary table, and the table did not collapse. Logan Paul then delivered the aside moonsault onto Jey Uso, and he drove Jay through the commentary table, which was crazy. So Cena got into the ring with the Undisputed WWE Championship. Cody was slowly getting up. Cena ended up decking Cody in the skull with the title. And then all of a sudden, a hooded figure got into the ring, and this hooded figure speared Cena down. And this person started punching away at Cena, and he picked up the Undisputed WWE Championship. And that hooded figure was revealed to be R-Truth. And R-Truth ended up hitting Cena in the face with the Undisputed WWE Championship, and the crowd went wild. So, we all know that there was a report that came out that WWE released R-Truth, but WWE, did they swerve us? Was this a work on their behalf? Maybe, because now from what I heard after the show went off the air, WWE is now calling R-Truth by his name, Ron Killings. So that's what they're going to call R-Truth now, Ron Killings. That's his, name. So this led to Cody end up hitting Cena with the Crossroads, and he ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso ended up winning the match. So that was how Money in the Bank went off the air. Overall, this was a boring match in my opinion, but the return of R-Truth was absolutely awesome, and the crowd, went wild for it. It was a great reaction that was given for R-Truth. But Money in the Bank, very good show it was tonight. Really enjoyed it. I mean, the main event match, Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso versus Logan Paul and John Cena, could have easily been taken off of the card, and it could have been on a random edition of SmackDown. This could have been a random match on SmackDown. But, take out the main event match and take out Dominik Mysterio versus Octagon Jr., still, it would have been a good show. But anyway, that's it for my review of Money in the Bank. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoy this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and until next video, I'll see you all later.